Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and this is a brave space, a space where vulnerability meets courage, and where real stories of resilience come to life. Each episode will bring you powerful conversations with people who've faced some of life's hardest challenges and turned them into sources of strength. We believe each story has power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us that we're never alone in this journey. Whether you're seeking hope, looking for inspiration, or simply need to know someone else has walked through fire and made it out, this is your space. Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and today's guest is Joshua Reed. He is a speaker who turned tragedy into a mission to help others find strength in adversity. After losing his leg in a motorcycle accident, he rebuilt his life around resilience, discipline, faith, and growth. He now speaks to men and leaders about identity, perseverance, and what it means to lead well when life doesn't go as planned. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on rebuilding identity after loss and finding purpose through service. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's great to be here. Great to be able to meet you and be able to have this conversation.
Great. I'm really excited to get into this. I think you have such a powerful story. So if you don't mind, are you ready to get some questions?
Let's go.
All right. So just take me back to what was your life before your accident. What were you doing? Who were you? Like, how would you describe yourself before the accident? Who were you? Your identity.
Yeah, so my accident was just over 6 years ago. It was November 13th of 2019. And I just moved to LA 6 months previous. So that was still kind of new to me. I had a career in physical therapy, just kind of doing the routine. I was involved in a lot of sports, skiing and snowboarding in the winter, biking, hiking, learning to surf, powerlifting. So I was always very active.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so like the career in physical therapy was great. It allowed me to work with my hands, which I always enjoy doing, and really help people. Uh,
Right.
so I've always had that drive to help, to build, to
Yeah, it's
just
sort
try
of
to make
always
the
in
world
you.
better.
Yeah.
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 Um, so that's what I was beforehand. And my Christian walk, I've believed in God almost my whole life. I've been in church and Christian school,
Mhm.
uh, and you have the times where your walk is good, and then the times where your walk is not something that you're really proud of.
Right.
And so, I ebbed and flowed in that area.
I think we all do.
Yeah. I'm not hard on
Yeah.
myself because of that. I
Yeah.
just wish I didn't waste so much time being numb and just kind of not caring as much as I should have. Uh,
Yeah, I get that.
so
Sometimes I feel that way too, you know?
yeah, I don't know. Everything that I've been through built me who I am today. There's things that I wish I didn't do, like we all do. But all in
Yeah.
all, it's gotten me to this point where I can work with people, and we'll get into this but it's like no judgment. We're all one mistake from one bad decision from throwing everything away. I'm
Right.
just I'm just
Yeah.
blessed that I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, like we're
Hopefully
all
ever.
human, we're all human, we all fall short of the glory of God,
That's right.
but we can, still come together, fellowship and, learn from each other, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, so
So
so that's what life before the accident was like, just
yeah,
kind of in that routine and just going.
yeah. So then you have a traumatic incident that happens. You get into an accident, you end up losing your leg. How did that affect you going forward, whether mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually? Did that shake your faith in a way as well?
Yeah, so I in my accident, I was on my motorcycle getting onto the freeway. I broke my right arm on the windscreen, and then I crushed my left hand. My knee hit and pretty much exploded.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, not very fun. I don't recommend it. Uh, there's better experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm laying on the freeway, and I've talked about this with other people, and it's really the part of the story that it was. I'm so blessed that it happened this way. But I'm laying there, and there was a peace and a comfort and a warmth as I'm laying on my back, looking at a street light above me. Just
Hmm.
got out of the, on the shoulder of the freeway so I don't get hit. And it was an audible conversation with God, which I've never had. It was this connection, and it was, if you want to give up, that's okay. Everything is all right. But if you want to fight, I'm here with you, and we're gonna do this.
Wow.
And so that decision was given to me, and the amount of comfort and the amount of love and the amount of acceptance there was just so powerful. And I was like, all right, let's fight. I'm not ready yet. Let's do this. And within a couple minutes, car pulled up, and they had emergency tourniquet in the car.
Hmm.
Uh, it was two medical professionals. One was a nurse practitioner. They were down in LA for a conference. So like God was like, all right, let's save your life now.
Yeah.
And it all came together in this way where I knew God was very much with me. Then I get to the hospital. I have an infection. I have a series of 14 procedures done at that time.
Hmm.
I've had 15 total procedures, whether it's on my arms or my leg. Um, and that was the time sitting in the hospital where it was really coming to a decision about who I was going to be, what I was going to let this do to my life. Am I going to throw it away? Am I going to fight? Am I going to be angry? Am I going to show love? And there's excuses for whatever I want to do. Nobody's going to blame me if I become angry, right? And so there was almost too much freedom there, which was
Hmm.
scary. But it was, this is not going to break me. I'm going to use this to help people. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this is not the end. And since then, I in that first year, it was a lot of slowly drifting down and hitting rock bottom. And it was coming to this point. It was almost a year after the accident. I came to this point where all I was doing was tearing everybody else down because all I was doing was surviving, and I was trying. There was no doubt, but it really wasn't enough. And at that point, there was a switch where I got really mad at God. And it was really
Hmm.
just laying down and just be like, God, this isn't fair. Why would you do this to me? Like, I'm
Right.
trying. Why would
Right.
you do this?
Right. So yeah, so I just want to thank you for sharing that like deeply
No.
personal moment that you had with God
Yeah.
while you were laying there on the freeway. It's funny how God has this way of turning like traumatic things that you think could be the end, but it turns into this beautiful moment that you just
Yeah.
described. Um, and that was just so wonderful to hear. And it reminds me of a scripture how God works everything out for the good for those who love
Mhm.
God. I feel like even though you had a traumatic memory, and as we get into more into this episode, we're going to talk about how God did move that, change that situation into good. So, but it's sometimes it's not always a smooth road, as you're
Yeah.
getting into. So you're saying that during this time, you had that that moment with God, and then go through all these challenges, and you're starting to struggle with this, and you're going to this point where saying, God, why is this happening? Yeah, how was that relationship with God shifting, or yeah, tell us more about that.
My prayer life, my relationship with God got so much stronger when I allowed myself to get mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in a very conservative home, where your prayers aren't like written down, they're not rehearsed, they're not scripted, but it's always full of respect, full of gratitude, and you don't really allow yourself to be completely honest in your prayer
Yes.
sometimes. But it was getting to this point where I was like, God, you have big shoulders. You can handle this. You're a
Yeah.
big boy. And I'm mad, you know? And that switch in mentality, it wasn't because of a lack of respect. It was just like, if you're going to be here, if you're going to be part of this, and we're going to have a relationship, then it's got to be, you know, it's got to get raw sometimes.
Yeah, raw and real. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So since then, you know, I was doing devotions, I was journaling, and my prayers became so much stronger, so much more raw, so much more just open.
Yeah. I just want to point this out. It's like, even though you were mad at God, you were still in relationship with him. And you were still doing those things where you're building that relationship. You're still talking to him. You're still doing all the spiritual, practices. Tell me, like, how did that either help you, or how did it, begin to shift your relationship back into, a positive, like, happy relationship where you're not mad?
Mm-hmm. But if you're in a relationship with someone and it's always easy, and
Uh-huh.
you say you love that person, well, you love them because it's easy, right? It's when
Right.
it gets hard. It's when it gets difficult. It's when you're after like, no, if I say I love this person, I have to love this person through the thick and thin.
Yeah.
And that's when relationships grow. That's when they really form a strong foundation. So when I allowed this to work this happened in my relationship with God, and I think it allowed it to become more real, because the honeymoon stage that lasted for 33 years was finally
Right.
over.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to start pouring in, and allowed God to start pouring in, which then allowed me to start just living with more integrity towards other people around me, which,
Okay.
you know, when your life becomes more honest inside, I think you can really pour out to others and really start making change.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So also you were talking about, like, how emotionally you had kind of changed through the accident, and you were having some difficulties there emotionally and mentally. How were you able to process that and then make that shift from turning your pain into purpose?
So emotionally, it's you know there's so much change, and I was a person who was involved in a lot of sports and always very physical. And then to look at yourself and just, I mean, I'm missing 2/3 of one of my legs. This arm was busted up. There's a big plate in this arm. This arm, you know, it was being protected because it was all messed up. And I would just look at myself in the mirror and be like, "You are broken." And in my head, I knew I it wasn't the end, but I would look at myself, and it was just sad. I went from, you know, I lost 60 pounds within a few weeks, between the leg and just body weight loss and infection and everything else. And so there was so much change, but I also had support from my family, my friends who were praying for me. I had strangers donating money and praying for me. And so I knew I had support. I knew that there was people that I could lean on. But emotionally, you know, it's this like hidden war that nobody else sees. And so first, like I said, I looked differently. So I'd accept myself for who I was, where I was in life, in this fight, and not be hard on myself when I have bad days, days where I feel angry, days where I feel depressed.
Like, giving yourself some grace.
Yeah. And you know, the days where I feel good, push hard. The days where I'm struggling, just try to like be content and be thankful and just like rely on God.
Yeah.
So emotionally, it's just been a fight. You know, there's good days still, there's bad days still. And as I've worked with other amputees, which we can get into later if you want, but you know, I can go and I can talk to these other amputees and be like, hey, I see where you're at. I've been where you're at. And not only does it help them, it also helps me remember the challenges that I've overcome, the things that used to bog me down, Uh, for instance, like if I would fall because I was learning how to use a prosthetic leg,
Hmm.
my entire day would be ruined. I would be so hard on myself and so angry. And then it got to this point where like I fell yesterday in the gym for the first time in like it was the dumbest fall that I think I've ever done
Hmm.
in the gym. And like I stood up, I looked around, there was a trainer who kind of laughed. All right, I was like, I'm good. That was dumb. And it was over. Like so what used to destroy an
Yes.
entire day was now just a laughable moment.
Okay, so you sound like you like grew a lot from the past to where you are now.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I do kind of similar work, not with amputees, but with people with mental health challenges. I do like peer support groups, and we come together and we share our experiences, and we kind of help each other, support each other, and do things like that. And actually, just yesterday, we were talking a little bit about identity and how we had an identity um, before our mental health challenges arose, and then there's an identity after that we have. And I kind of brought up how, for me at least, I had to grieve the person I was before I started having the mental health challenges. Is that a similar thing that you had to go through with your experience?
Yeah. So we talk about the stages of grief and we think like, okay, once we pass that stage, we're good. Once then I pass the next stage, I'm good. And until I finally get to the 5 stages, then I get to acceptance and we're good. But you don't think about how you just cycle through and they'll just hit you completely out of the blue. Um, yeah, it's been interesting in the grief to see how it can grow you, how it can change you.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's interesting because if it's in sports or something, you say you're playing basketball, you spend the entire time learning to dribble or pass or shoot or run drills every day for hours. And if you miss a shot, you don't like suddenly throw all your dreams away. You're like, oh, I missed a shot. That's fine. Like, but somehow in our own life, we take a completely different approach where we think if we learned a lesson, it's good. We'll never make that mistake again. Or now we've overcome that. We never have to slip back in. And I think grief
Yeah.
is the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me more about that process of growing through that grief and growing to that new identity
Yeah.
to where you are now, and where you turn that, your pain into service and found purpose in your service.
Yeah. So, like I said, when I first looked at myself in the mirror, it was, it wasn't me, right? Or at least it's not the me that I wanted to see. Uh, it wasn't like, I'm decent shape. I'm all right looking. Not the prettiest, but I don't think I'm the ugliest. I had a good social structure, social life. And so I looked at who my identity was and realized that it was so consumed in part of my life, at least, was very consumed into what people saw, what people thought of me, what I wanted to think I was. And so part of the identity was going back to the bottom, going back to that foundation, be like, no, I'm a child of God. I'm a son. I'm a brother. Now I'm a husband. And understanding who my identity was at the core, like, am I kind? Am I loving? Am I patient? Where's my faith at? And understanding what your identity looks like to God and how that trumps anything else. And then also looking out in a broken world and having that love and compassion and that wherewithal to be like, what is it that I can offer the world to make it better? To try to show love. Is it to one person? Because if so, that's fine. Is it to a room full of people? If so, cool. But what is my influence? What am I able to pour out? How am I able to share God's blessing? And when I see the world and the lack of love that seems like it's everywhere, it just became this focus point of me being like, you now know who you are, You have been broken. You have been down and out. You have struggled with pain, with addiction, with anger, with everything. And now it's time to step out and to really pour into other people. And so being able to gather all of these experiences, and I've had a number of experiences that I don't wish on other people, but God has used it in a way to transform me and to be able to help other people. Even if it's sitting there in silence with them. And I'm very thankful for that. Despite the number of tears that I've had,
Mhm.
I'm very thankful.
Yeah, while you were, telling me about this, that really, yeah, struck a chord with me because, like you said, listen to my podcast, and I had the psychiatric hospitalization, and like for me, that felt like you can't go any lower than that, on the social totem pole, um,
Hmm.
and I said to myself, how could like someone love someone like me, someone that's been through so much and, is broken, not physically, but mentally. Um, and I turned to God, and God came to me and, told me, you are still my child, you know? So when you said you were a child of God and that was part of your identity, um, I really connected with that, because in my story, that's God was there for me like that, and that's where my identity comes. Like also as you said, that identity trumps everything else, who you
Hmm.
are in Christ, and I've come a long way too through that faith. Um,
Yeah.
so just tell me more about that identity in Christ. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So first, I almost am lucky that it's my leg. Everybody sees it. Everybody knows. They're like, oh, this guy's got one leg. Check. But when it's the internal fight, when it's the psych, when it's the emotional pain, nobody sees that. That's hard. And in several ways, like you're fighting this invisible fight. And so my heart goes out to you for going through that.
Appreciate
It's
that.
it's ugly. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
not, it rips you apart, and it's just a constant wound until you are allowed to heal. Until God is there and you're like, God, heal me. Let me, like, uh, Jesus said, he's like, take this cup from me. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to do it. Except we're in a position where God will take that cup from us. We don't have to go through this fight alone. We don't have to bear it all the rest of our life. There is healing. And so part of the identity is understanding that this was just physical. Like, I'm gonna have to deal with the emotions. I'm gonna have to deal with the mental side of things. Uh, but my body will heal. I will never have two legs again. Okay, I can deal with learning a prosthetic. I can learn how to get around. I can learn how to be involved in sports again. My identity is not wrapped up in my body. My identity is not wrapped up in me being able to do sports or what friends I'm with or what people look at me and think. And there is such a peace that comes with knowing that stuff doesn't matter. Like, if you had all the money in the world and to not have to worry about finances, that would be amazing, right? Because it's just a peace that comes with that. Being able to not worry what people think about this, there's a peace that comes with that. And so your identity becomes so much stronger, and you can then help people like you were working on sharing a story. You work with sitting with people who are going through psych issues, whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent, whether it's traumatic, whether it was chemical. Like, there's so many reasons for these issues, but you're able to sit with them and you're able to speak to them because you're so secure. You have a greater level of security into who you are and into what that means.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so really the identity, like, if we don't know who we are always fighting for something. That's why there's this rat race to gather more, have better houses, more cars, like, and it's so it's so dumb because once you get to the other side and you look at it, you realize how temporary it is, how vapid it is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
just there's so much more. To have a friend, to be able to give a hug and receive one with love means more than having a third, fourth, fifth car any day.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Um, and the part that really stood out to me when you were speaking, and I think this would be very helpful for my audience, for our audience, is when you talk about that peace that you get from God, that that peace that passes all understanding. Um, I feel that peace. I feel like you're feeling that peace in those moments. Um, just go if you could go a little bit deeper into that peace that you were able to experience.
Mm-hmm. So if you, I was blessed enough to have parents who I never questioned their love. There was no divorce. They weren't perfect, but they were always there. And in the same way, I wasn't a perfect son. Uh, but there was a love that they were able to give out that I never really questioned. Um, there was times where I was like, I don't agree with what you're doing. This isn't very loving, but I never questioned their love towards me.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, there's a peace, there's a contentment where, it doesn't mean that I never get frustrated by the way it is. Um, with everything going, my life isn't perfect. There's bad days, like I said, but there's a peace and a contentment that comes with every day where you can look at it and be like, this is temporary. Sadness and happiness, those are temporary emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where peace, where joy, where contentment, those are permanent. Those are mindset decisions. And when you start realizing that you can make the decision to be content, you can make the decision to be peace, like have peace, then it changes how much things matter on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, kind of shift your perspective on um, what you focus on.
Yeah.
Um,
And just like I don't question my parents' love,
yeah,
I don't question the joy and the peace that I can have from God because there is
right,
a permanence there.
right. Like there's one thing to focus on the things of this world. There's like a whole nother thing when you focus on the things that are above,
Hmm.
spiritually speaking. And I think you really hit that on the nail um, on what it is to live that way.
Yeah. And it's funny because like earlier you asked me like, are you Christian? What's the spirituality? Is it something that's okay to talk about? And I'll talk to a lot of people that aren't Christians. And I would hope that my love of God, my relationship with God comes out, whether I talk about it or not. But when you're able to talk to another person who's like, oh no, we have an understanding here, like you get it, it's funny because it is so foundational. And to not be able to talk about it seems like I'm almost lessening my story and experience. But it's hard because not everybody's going to be receptive. But
Yeah.
everybody's receptive to love and kindness. Everybody's
Yes.
receptive
Yeah.
to overcoming a hard day, or a hard part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me. I had just given a webinar, and I shared my story through that webinar, and in my story, I talk about my faith and how my faith was able to get me through um, what I went through, and um, and people afterwards, like during the comments, like, "Oh, how were you able to do that? Like to share your spirituality without making it seem like I'm pushing my religion on them, you know?" And for me, at least, it comes to the point where me and my faith are inseparable. It just you get me, you get my faith. It's just part of my story, and you may agree with it, and you may not. Take it as you will, but it's just part of who I am, and that's just what you're going to get. Is
Hmm.
that similar, like to you, or how you view it,
I mean,
or is it different?
yeah, no, I mean it's very much that way. I growing up, I had some men of God in my life that showed me what real Christianity looked like, and it wasn't because they were preachy. It's because they were thoughtful with their words, thoughtful with their actions. They were always willing to help, to reach down and lift another person up, and to to speak through your actions, through your calmness, through the calmness in the storm. To be able to speak about God in those ways without even mentioning God, I think is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Jesus did miracles and he healed people and didn't just say, like, believe, believe, believe.
Yeah.
It's because one changes a person, like how they think, but another one completely transforms their heart. And
Right.
if I can do this much, such a tiny amount of what Jesus did, or some of these great men of God that I've seen in my life or have been through history, then my life will be a success.
Right. Yeah. Because I think some people get a little bit too caught up in the religion part of things, but
Yeah.
it's about reflecting Christ and
Yeah.
being Christ-like, And
so, like you said, if I'm here, I'm going to talk about God to some degree, or at least God's going to be pouring out through my pores to some degree.
It's more about how you live your life than what you say.
Mm-hmm.
I even had an experience where, when I was in the hospital, someone came up to me and asked me about my faith, and said he could tell just by how I carried myself. Even though I'm in a psych hospital, even the way I carried myself, he could tell that I was a believer. And he said sometimes it's not about pushing the scriptures and doing it, just how you live your life, and that example, that leadership shows. So
and I think that's the greatest compliment we can receive. To have somebody be like, "Are you a Christian? I think I see God in you." In a positive way.
In a positive way, yeah. But I can definitely say I see it in you, and it's coming out. It's pouring out of you right now.
Thank you, sir.
So I really do appreciate that. So we talked about this identity change, or the strengthening of a new identity. And now you have this, or what is part of the process of shaping that identity? Was it in the service that you started? Tell us more about the service and how that continued to shape your identity.
Like I said in the beginning, when I worked in physical therapy throughout my entire life, I always wanted to help people. I like working with my hands. I've always had that drive to some degree, although there wasn't always a clear direction of how. And that was something that I struggled with most of my life, is like, I don't have a passion per se, but going through all of this and taking the time, these quiet moments in my life and in prayer of reflection, it was, no, my passion is to like really build. I have a focus on building men, building like a Christ-centered, loving, strong man emotionally. There's people like Andrew Tate out there, and they're trying to build like a strong man, quote unquote, but it's ugly. It's not a man. And so I have a strong passion of that. And I look at leadership and the poor leadership that we have, whether it's in the house or in our communities or politically at the companies we work at. And are they leading just at work, or how are they leading in the rest of their life? Why is it so segmented? So I started looking around and seeing these gaps, these broken points. And I was like, these are actually the things that drive me. These are the things that when I'm in a conversation about it, I get excited. They're the things that I see and they just break my heart, but push me to do better. So along with finding my identity, it was also understanding, like, if you're doing a puzzle, what's the actual shape of my piece and how's it going to fit into the larger picture? And let's use it. Or if you're dealing with tools, like, what tool am I, and how is it part of the process to build? Um, and so yeah, like I said, I work with men. I like to talk about leadership. I like to deal with finding your identity because I think that is so foundational. And then growing through adversity, which is something that I also focus on. It's every time. Sorry, I'm kind of pivoting from the original question, but every time we come to these points of adversity, every time we come to these points of deep pain and questioning, whether it's somebody close to us dying, or we lose our job, or just trauma, we are given the opportunity to question, to take that step back, to figure out what direction we want to go. And we can either keep doing what we were doing, or we can change direction to something better, and to start pushing in that direction. And these moments that we talk about and we think about that were so soul crushing, like being admitted, or like losing my leg, it was, what am I going to do with this?
Mm.
If you can help other people understand that, then there's no more, this was such a terrible time in my life. It was, no, man, this was such a great opportunity to grow. This was like right now, my life, a part of the massive layoffs that happened like 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago now, whatever it was. Like, I lost my job like 6 weeks ago. And that's not cool. Like, that's like, okay, what's this going to look like financially? But it was also this moment of being like, all right, God, what are you teaching me right now? My life is in flux. My life is kind of challenging right now, which means now is the perfect opportunity to take that next step, to grow a little bit more, to redefine who I am, what I'm going to be, and grow my faith in who God is. Because if we can't trust that God is going, like you said in the beginning, if we can't trust that God is going to make everything good, then everything we go through, is just tearing us down. But if we can believe, God is using this to good, God is using this to grow me, God is using this to help me transform and to help other people, because we are being watched, we are being listened to, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
So we are always given these opportunities if we can just realize it.
Yeah, that is such a powerful mindset you just gave us. Just being able to shift your perspective and look at things as ways to grow, and being able to make an impact from the pain. There's really two questions I want to ask you from this point. We'll start out with one, and then we'll get to the second one. I wrote it down so I won't forget. Well, the first question is about being a leader of men. I consider myself a leader of men as well. And you were saying how there are some leaders out there that make being a man look ugly, and it's like that in the Black community as well, where we're looking at these rappers and, all it's entertainment people, whatever, and they kind of portray that, oh, men have to be like this. This is how you be. And you talk about that toxic masculinity in society and in the media and whatnot. So from your perspective, from your opinion, how should a man really be? To you, what is a real man's identity? How do you describe that from your point of view?
I apologize, because most of these questions, my ADD kicks in. So I start answering it, but then I start taking all these tangents. So
totally
I apologize.
Cool. That's totally cool. I'm keeping up with you.
So the idea of the lack of masculinity in society, of true masculinity, was actually, I used to live in Chicago, and my pastor at the time, I went to a predominantly, it was like an all Black church for the most part.
Oh, okay.
It was like 30% African, 55%, 60% African American, and then a few white people thrown in the mix. Uh, and
Wow.
so we met on Saturday mornings, like once a month, and we just talked about like what does masculinity look like? What does being a father, a leader, a husband, a friend, what does that look like in terms of leadership? And we talked about the lack of leadership in society. And I mean, this is coming from an amazing godly black man that was in my life, talking about, and he worked a lot with the gangs in Chicago and talked about like the plight of men, whether it's from prison or drug abuse or physical abuse or war or the lack of black men in society. That was how it was presented, but it's the lack of men in society. And it became something so real. And you start like I said, you open your eyes and you start seeing what it is. And it's like, man, there are not a lot of men. And so if my dad, he's a great man. He's a Christian man. He was a school teacher. He poured into others. I can't fault him for who he is. I love him so much. But also he came from a broken home and was never taught what a man looks like. And so my life the life he gave me is way better than the life that he received. But I also didn't have a lot of like, what does a man look like? And he tried. Like I said, I can't fault him, but I had to start looking and I had to start researching and I had to start finding and learning, what does it mean to be a man? Why is it we're surrounded by a bunch of adult boys that can never seem to get over the hump? Why is toxic masculinity a thing? Well, it's because it's all based in insecurity. It's based on trying to pose and trying to pretend to be tough. And like the strongest people don't have to prove they're strong. Like there's a reason why Jesus was so meek, because he knew he was the Son of God. He didn't have to pretend
That's right.
that he could snap his fingers and destroy everything or fix it. He was who he was because he was confident in who he was. And so when we look at what it means to be a man and why we don't have many men, it's because we don't know who we are. We don't know our name. If you don't understand your name is Omar, it doesn't matter what I'm saying to you or I'm trying to get your attention. You don't know I'm talking to you because you don't know who you are. And the same way, like we look at these men, it's like they don't know who they are, so they're all just posing. They're all just acting. They're all just playing pretend. And so we look at what does it mean to be a man? Well, one is just take ownership, because I like going back. It's like I'm sure I'm not the only person who thought this, but it's like I have leadership broken down into 4 tenets. And if we look at leadership or discipleship or what's it mean to be a man, like they are all so similar. But number one is take ownership of who you are, take ownership of what you do, take ownership of what's happening to you. You're not a victim. Bad things happen. Okay, cool. Deal with it. Like own what's happening.
I love that.
Like seek wisdom. And these are like going through the stages of grief. You're going to circle back on these, because once you start getting stronger in one, you're going to see that you're not strong enough in another. So we have ownership, and then next we go to like seeking wisdom. And the Bible says like have knowledge, let that become understanding, and then with that understanding, let that become wisdom. So if we have knowledge, we need to learn, we need to apply it to our life and allow it to become understanding. And with those experiences, with that practice, it becomes wisdom. And then the application of wisdom is discernment. And so if we can discern what's right, if we can discern what's wrong, if we can discern how to help and how to love, we just become stronger. And then the next is discipline. And that's that day in, day out. What do people see? What do people not see? It's that I wake up every day around the same time for a reason. Like I exercise for a reason. I try to be careful with my words for a reason. And just because it's difficult doesn't mean I stop. If it's right to do, you do it. And then finally it becomes discipleship or leadership or masculinity. And that's when you're finally able to pour out into others. And you know, the last podcast that I'd listened to that you gave with your cousin, it was how he was a role model for you. Why was he a role model? because he was a step ahead of you and able to show and demonstrate and to help and to show love. And if we can get to that point, that's where masculinity becomes so powerful. Because as being a man, like, we are so blessed. Like, the amount of responsibility that God places on our shoulders, the strength that he has given us, we are so blessed to be who we are. Just like women are so blessed to be women. Like, we are so blessed to be where we're at in this life. But if we don't ever get to this point of maturity where you can pour that out into other people, it's so wasted. And so when we look at this, like, what does it mean to be a healthy man? It means you're going through and you're questioning yourself. It means that you're being sensitive when you need to be sensitive. You're strong when you need to be strong. You stand up and fight for the weak, especially in the injustices that we see. We are given a voice. We are given an ability. We are given these strengths for a reason. And if we don't ever acknowledge that and we don't hone that, then it becomes wasted. So that's a long answer to your first question.
No, that was perfect. You know, that's the depth that I'm looking for. Because in this show, we go deep. So I really appreciate you breaking it down for us like that. That was really on point. The next question that I wanted to ask you was about that pivot point. How do we make that pivot from, something really terrible happened, something traumatic may have happened, but we're going to make that pivot and make this turn out for good and make a difference, make an impact, and whatnot. That in your leadership, you teach men how to do that. Tell us, how do we do that?
First, to understand that it's a choice. Nobody's going to force you to be a better man. Nobody's going to force you. Even if they put pressure on you, they can't change anything. You have to make the decision of what you're going to become. It doesn't mean that it's always crystal clear what the final destination is, but it's my choice to start going down this path of growth. And then, just like going back to the sports analogy with basketball, it requires practice. It requires that day in, that day out, you show up and you put in the work, not because it's perfect, not because you're always even taking steps forward, but you're putting in the work, because so much of it it's just building that consistency and building that habit of thought. It's building, like, if we're having bad days and we have a good thought kind of makes us laugh, it's like a rarity. Or if we're having always good days, but then we get troubled by dark thoughts and we can't let it go, like, then dark thoughts become a habit. Like, if we don't constantly stay disciplined in our mindset, it's easy to slide one way or the other. So starting to build a habit with mindset, and with the discipline, and really, like I said, it all comes down to making that decision and then committing to that decision.
Yeah.
It's not hard. I mean, it's
right.
In theory, it's not hard. In daily practice and consistency, it's the lifelong battle.
Yeah, but all starts with that decision. That's where the pivot is. The pivot is the decision. All right, you make that decision, you make that pivot,
yeah,
and then you go from there. And it's just something you work at. Yeah, I like that. But we're running short on
luckily,
time.
I've had people like my wife in my life. Oh, yeah, we can jump over. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to get into my last two questions before we end. What gives you hope?
So if we look at what biblical hope is, it's not just some wish or a prayer. It's something we can put our faith in. And something I think about a lot is, where can I place my hope? It's understanding that the things that we see are temporary. My hope is in God. My hope is also, like, God created us to be loving creatures. He put it in us to want to help. So even when the world is hard and it's dark and it's broken and it seems so heavy and unfixable, the hope is in God. And through that we were able to pour out into others. So where's my hope? Sorry. Should have thought about this question more.
No, go for it. Go for it.
No, I think it's really just it's knowing that if I can sit with the people, if I can demonstrate love, and I know it's received even a little bit, and it allows another person to do that to someone else, to show that little bit of love to someone else. It's a cascading effect. My sphere of influence is not worldwide. It's not countrywide. It's not citywide. My sphere of influence is very small. But if I can show love, and then they show love, and then they show love, there's that ripple effect, and it's bound to happen. And that's really like the hope is in God. The hope is in who He is, but it's also knowing that just even if my sphere of influence is small, it makes a difference.
Thank you for that answer. And I want to get to our last question for today before we end. Now, what would you say to someone who is struggling? Maybe they're amputee, maybe they're a man who's searching for meaning, searching to build their identity, and they're just struggling right now, and they're looking for hope. What would you say to those people?
Mm-hmm. That today is not the end of the life. They will get over it. It doesn't mean life is going to be easy, but tomorrow means that you got through today. And if we can get to tomorrow, and if we can get to that, the next tomorrow, like, and if our mindset is one of growth and of healing and of love, like, it's hard. Living is not for the weak. But if we can get through today, it's going to be okay. If we can keep working towards the things that are good and of pure, it doesn't matter the day-to-day highs and lows. Our goal, our future, our vision is clear, and you're going to reach it if you just keep putting in the work. And you know, it seems simple, like I said, but it's like it's this daily challenge, this daily discipline of you can get through this if you are willing to work. So much of it is discipline.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. Because like with me and my recovery, wasn't easy. I had to put in the work. So to tell people, you know, you do have to put in the work. That is so true. But it's possible. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Josh, thank you for coming on this show. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for being vulnerable, sharing these deeply personal things that you did. And I really do believe that you gave everyone a powerful testimony today. And I know I learned a lot, and I got a lot from our conversation. So I know our audience did as well. So I just want to thank you for that. Until next time, this has been Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark. Let's rise.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Voices of Hope. Your time and attention mean the world, and we hope today's conversation has inspired and encouraged you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss a moment of hope. We're all part of this community, and your voice matters. If you're ready to share your own story of resilience and become a voice of hope, reach out to me directly at omarkenyattaclark@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, stay tuned for our next episode. We've got more powerful stories and inspiring voices coming your way, and I can't wait for you to be a part of it.